10 years after I married Leo, he named my older sister his Empress. Then he ordered me to become the host for a parasitic poison worm to feed it with my own body, all for the sake of curing her of a poison she had carried for years. Amelia, it's just a sorrow eater, he had said, his voice soft and reassuring. It will make you forget all your troubles. Isn't that a good thing? It sounded like a wonderful proposition. I swallowed the worm right there in front of him, and just as he wished, I began to forget. I forgot how he had demoted me from his wife to a mere consort, a secondary figure in his life. I forgot the bowl of bitter medicine he had once forced upon me, the concoction that made me lose our unborn child. I forgot that I had once loved him more than my own life. Later, I would ask my handmaiden, Clara, with genuine confusion, His Majesty is being so strange. I smiled at him from across the room. So why is he crying? I had always believed that Leo and I were deeply in love. In the 10 years we were married, I stood by him through every hardship. I was with him every step of the way, supporting him as he went from a deposed crown prince with nothing to his name to the most powerful man in the entire land. I remember countless nights when he would hold my hand tightly, his breath heavy with exhaustion and relief beside me in our bed. Amelia, he would whisper into the darkness, his voice thick with emotion. Thank God for you. That was the man I knew, the man I loved, until the day the imperial edict for the new empress was announced, and my name was not on it. Instead, it was Isabella. Ignoring the vocal protests of his entire court, he insisted on making the Duke of Shu's widow, my own estranged sister, his empress. Amelia, she's your sister after all, he reasoned with me, his tone leaving no room for argument. We can't let her feel slighted. If she isn't the empress, would you have her kneel to you every day? He looked at me then, his expression entirely matter-of-fact, just like it was now. Amelia, she's your sister. Are you really going to stand by and watch her die? The boy whose heart was once filled with only me had, somewhere along the way, replaced me with someone else. When Isabella wanted the throne, he simply handed it to her. When Isabella was suffering from her old poison, he didn't hesitate for a moment to order me to become a human vessel for the cure, to feed a poison with one's body. The words themselves were simple enough to say, but the reality was a gruesome ordeal. It meant the host would have their flesh and blood slowly devoured by the worm for 7 agonizing days and 7 sleepless nights. Only after that period of torment could a single bowl of blood be drawn, a potent elixir capable of curing any poison. I stared at Leo, a lump forming in my throat so tight that I couldn't speak. Didn't he know the horror of what he was asking? Of course he knew. He was the one who had gone to such great lengths to find the shaman who could perform this very ritual. But even knowing the unimaginable agony I would have to face, he was completely determined. He needed me to raise that poison worm, and the reason was simple and cruel. I was Isabella's only living sister. My blood, so closely related to hers, would be the most effective cure in her body. Amelia, it's just a sorrow eater. Leo softened his tone, kneeling down in front of me to take my hands. His eyes, once so familiar, were now full of a warmth that felt alien. It will hurt for a little while, but then you'll forget all your troubles. Isn't that a good thing? I swallowed the metallic taste of fear and resignation in my mouth and forced a weak smile. Yes, I heard myself say. It's all I could ever ask for. That evening, Isabella sent for me. Just as Leo wanted, when we met, she did not have to kneel to me. Instead, it was I who had to kneel to her. I was prostrate on the cold, hard floor, while Isabella lounged comfortably on a plush divan, looking down at me. I hear, little sister, that you've agreed to feed the poison to cure me. After only 3 months in the palace, Isabella was glowing with health, her skin fair and rosy. She didn't wait for my answer, just smiled brightly, a look of pure satisfaction on her face. You're working so hard, sister. Mrs. Lee, bring out that fertility statue His Majesty acquired for me and give it to my sister as a reward. She paused for dramatic effect, her smile widening. Oh, I almost forgot. With your body in its current state, I'm afraid even a real god couldn't help you have a child. She let out a delicate little laugh, and her ladies-in-waiting standing behind her dutifully giggled along with her. This was my beloved older sister, Our father had always adored her. He was convinced I was a source of bad luck because she had fallen gravely ill on the very day I was born, a belief that led him to banish me to a remote country estate for most of my childhood. Our mother pitied her. The marriage pact was originally between her and Leo, but when Leo was deposed and lost his title, she flatly refused to marry a disgraced prince. So, my mother brought me back from the estate, a convenient replacement to marry him in her place. And now it seemed even Leo loved her. What's so funny? Speak of the devil. Leo strode into the hall, his presence immediately silencing the room. The laughter died instantly. I kept my head bowed, my gaze fixed on the intricate patterns of the rug. They were laughing at me, this barren hen who would never lay an egg. Leo's face went cold. "Insolence," he snapped. The ladies in waiting dropped to their knees in terror. "Who told consort Amelia to kneel? I've said before that she doesn't even have to kneel before me. Who gave you the audacity?" "My love," Isabella cooed, rising gracefully from the divan. She tugged gently on Leo's sleeve, her voice dripping with sweetness. "Why are you being so fierce?" she added, a coy smile playing on her lips. "You're scaring the baby in my belly." My eyelashes trembled. I slowly looked up. Isabella was pouting, guiding Leo's hand to her stomach. He touched her belly, a look of careful wonder and awe on his face. He felt my gaze on him and glanced at me for a fleeting moment. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Then he looked away, back to Isabella. No wonder Leo was in such a hurry to cure her. Isabella had been poisoned back when she was married to the Duke. The poison wasn't fatal, but it made it incredibly difficult for her to conceive. And even if she did, she was prone to miscarriage. She had only been in the palace for 3 months, and she was already carrying Leo's child. How many months along was she? They must have been together long before she officially entered the palace. It all made a sickening kind of sense. I grew up on a remote estate, isolated and forgotten. The one who was truly Leo's childhood sweetheart, the one who shared his early years, was always Isabella. I wandered aimlessly through the imperial garden, my hand drifting unconsciously to my own flat stomach. I'd had a child once, too. But at 6 months, Leo had given me a bowl of medicine and made me lose it. He had held me then, as I bled and cried, kissing my tears away over and over. "Amelia, if I don't use her and her family to get my father's attention, he'll forget about me completely," he had explained, his voice desperate. "I can live my whole life as a deposed prince, but how could I bear to watch you suffer with me? Amelia, don't be afraid. You are my wife. In the future, we'll have so many more children." But now, someone else was his wife, and someone else would be the one to have many children with him. When I returned to my residence, the Palace of Morning Dew, my handmaiden, Clara gasped, "My lady! Did the Empress torment you again?" I just shook my head, too weary to speak. "I'm just not used to it," I murmured. I wasn't used to my entire world changing so drastically in just a few short months. "I just need to sleep. Everything will be better after I sleep." I bathed and changed, but as I slept, I dreamed of the past. My history with Leo went back much further than the 10 years of our marriage. I met him once when I was 10 years old. He had lost a precious jade pendant and was searching for it frantically in the gardens of my family's estate. I was the one who found it nestled in the grass and returned it to him. After he returned to the capital, he wrote me a letter to thank me. That single letter started a correspondence that lasted for 5 years. The year I came of age, we confessed our love for each other through those letters. That's why I never imagined he could truly be in love with Isabella. And why, on our wedding night, I was so overcome with joy to see that very same jade pendant on his belt from under my red veil. I dreamed of how I'd tossed aside all modesty and eagerly lifted my own veil to see him. The young man stood there, handsome in his red wedding robes, his eyes filled with undisguised awe as he looked at me. He was stunned for a long moment, then a slow smile spread across his face as he bowed with a theatrical flourish. "My apologies, dear wife. I've kept you waiting." He told me then that no matter what he became, a prince or an emperor, he would always be my husband and mine alone. but today I heard Isabella call him my love. She said it so sweetly, so naturally. A dense, sharp pain pricked at my heart, waking me from my dream. I opened my eyes to see Leo staring down at me in the darkness. He rarely came to my palace at night anymore. Usually, he wouldn't even be here for half an hour before Isabella would find a reason to summon him away. Now he was watching me, unblinking, just like all those years ago when we shared a bed, when we would wake in the middle of the night to find only each other in our eyes. "Having a nightmare?" Leo asked, his voice a low whisper. He gently pried open my tightly clenched fists. "Isabella has always been spoiled. Don't be mad at her." So that's why he was here, to make excuses for Isabella. I pushed his hand away and turned my back to him. "Giving me the cold shoulder?" Leo's voice turned hard. "Amelia, you're not behaving." He grabbed the nape of my neck and forcefully kissed me. His familiar scent, so long absent it now felt foreign, invaded my senses. The sudden thought of how he might have just kissed Isabella in the very same way, with the same hands, the same mouth, made a wave of nausea hit me, and I shoved him away with all my might. Leo's expression turned ugly. "Amelia, you find me repulsive?" He grabbed my wrist, his grip like iron, and was about to force himself on me. Tears streamed down my face, hot and silent. Leo clicked his tongue in annoyance. "Why is it that the better your life gets, the more you cry?" He stopped, his tone softening as he gently wiped away my tears with his thumb. He always knew exactly how to handle me. He knew I'd been cast aside as a child, starved for affection. He knew he was the only warmth I had ever known in my life, and that I couldn't easily leave him. He knew I loved him with my entire being. All it took was a little tenderness, and I was powerless against him. "You heard today that Isabella is pregnant. You've always been the kindest person I know. Could you really bear to see that child lost? I've confirmed it with the shaman again and again. Hosting the poison will only cause some physical pain. It won't do any lasting harm. That worm will even ease your sorrows. Maybe then you won't be so prone to crying." Leo smiled and tapped my nose playfully, speaking as if it were a trivial matter. My throat felt heavy again, like it was filled with lead and I couldn't make a sound. "Your Majesty, the Empress has a terrible headache. She requests your presence." There it was, right on cue. This time, however, Leo didn't leave in a hurry as he usually did. He glanced toward the door, then pulled me into his arms, gently stroking my hair. "Amelia, once you've cured Isabella, once you've forgotten all the unhappy things from the past, we'll start over. We'll start over." "Your Majesty!" the servant outside called again, more urgently this time. Leo let me go and turned to leave. "Your Majesty!" I called out, my voice raspy, stopping him at the door. "When can the shaman prepare the sorrow eater?" Leo turned back, a flicker of relief in his eyes. "The poison is already in the capital." "Then tomorrow morning," I said, looking at him, at the young man who was once etched into the very fabric of my soul. "Tomorrow morning, please have the shaman come to the palace." I didn't know if the sorrow eater would give Leo and me a new beginning. I only knew I had no other choice. My parents, my husband, they all wanted me to cure Isabella. The next day, my palace of morning dew was busier than it had ever been. My father, the prime minister, my titled mother, my husband, the emperor, and my sister, the empress. It was a happy family reunion. 4 people, 4 pairs of eyes, all smiling as they watched me. They watched as the tea, with the writhing poison worm inside, was brought before me. I stared at the black, spider-like insect at the bottom of the delicate porcelain cup, my fists clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palms. I am terrified of insects. Years ago, a cruel servant on the estate retaliated after I told my mother about her mistreatment of me. She snuck into my room in the dead of night and filled my bed with bugs. "Amelia," Leo said, his voice carrying a clear hint of a warning. I bit my lip until I tasted the coppery tang of blood, then picked up the cup and drank the entire contents in one go. My father immediately burst into hearty laughter. "The Empress is truly blessed by the heavens. I wish your Majesty and Her Highness a healthy and happy birth." My mother rushed to Isabella's side, fussing over her. That filthy thing. Did it frighten you, Your Highness? Isabella feigned a helpless sigh. Father, mother, you should be more concerned about my sister. Sister, let me help you to your chambers to rest. She supported me with a look of deep concern on her face, but as she turned away from the others, she whispered in my ear with a low, triumphant laugh, Even a pearl hidden in dust will one day reveal its light. You foolish girl, did you really think the crown prince had all that free time back then to exchange heartfelt letters with you? Even a pearl hidden in dust will one day reveal its light. That's what Leo wrote to me in one of his letters all those years ago. My lady is like a pearl hidden in dust, her worth unseen. But one day, her time will come. He said I was a pearl covered in dust. He said I was wonderful. He said I was worthy of love. His words were like a single ray of moonlight shining into the profound darkness of my young life. But how did Isabella know about them? I didn't have time to think. The moment the poison entered my body, it began to gnaw at my flesh and bones with an intensity I could never have imagined. I lay on the bed, my body trembling uncontrollably, but I clenched my teeth, determined not to make a single sound. They would laugh at me. I had married Leo when he was at his absolute lowest, entered the palace as a crown princess, only to end up as a mere consort. They were already laughing their heads off behind my back. If they found out Leo had turned me into a human cauldron for his new empress, I would become the laughingstock of the entire city all over again. I curled into a tight ball just like I did as a child when I desperately wanted someone to hold me, but no one ever came. I felt like I was being drenched in sweat over and over again. As I drowned in the suffocating, all-consuming pain, my mind was flooded with a torrent of humiliating, painful memories. The cold, lonely estate, the servants who always looked down on me. My mother's harsh, dismissive words. They mistreated you? You're the daughter of the prime minister, why would they mistreat you? Have you ever stopped to think about what you did wrong? Was it your behavior? Your words? My silent, indifferent father. My sister with her honeyed words and hidden daggers. You're so beautiful, little sister. The country air must be good for you. You don't resent father and mother for never visiting, do you? The grand, opulent coronation of the empress, where I had to watch my husband place the crown on my sister's head. The whispers of the court. She's truly worthy of being the empress. His Majesty defied everyone to appoint her. So much more dignified than that foxy second daughter. What's the use of 10 years of his favor, 10 years and no children? His Majesty is merciful for not divorcing her. A tearing pain in my lower body and the faint, ghostly cry of a baby. Oh, what a beautiful little princess. Who could have given the lady that medicine? What a sin. No, it wasn't like that. My life wasn't so wretched. Leo wasn't like that. He'd never set foot in a kitchen in his life, but he learned to make longevity noodles for me on my birthday. He cared so much about his pride, yet he borrowed money from everyone he knew to buy me a special birthday gift. He was supposed to be keeping a low profile, but he got into a street brawl just because someone said a few bad words about me. He refused the beautiful women his father, the former emperor, sent to the East Palace 3 times, doting on me and me alone. He would always hold me and say, Amelia, everything will be all right. One day you will be the most honored woman in the world. I will lay all the world's treasures at your feet. He wrote me so many letters. It was because of his constant letters that the servants on the estate finally stopped bullying me. He said I was his most precious pearl. Even a pearl hidden in dust will one day reveal its light. But how did Isabella know? Was it some kind of cruel game they played together? A private joke at my expense? Was it all a lie? I snapped my eyes open, the pain a sharp blade piercing every corner of my body. I scrambled out of bed, calling his name. Leo! Leo! Clara rushed in, her face pale with alarm. My lady, what is it? His Majesty? Where is His Majesty? I'm in pain. Tears streamed down my face. It hurt so much. The poison felt like it was trying to burrow into the deepest part of my heart to devour it completely. My lady, His Majesty is... He's at the Empress's palace right now, Clara sobbed. Boom! I collapsed onto the floor. It felt like something vital inside me had shattered into a million pieces. A mouthful of blood followed, staining the front of my nightgown. It was a lie. It was all a lie. The pearl, the love, the marriage, all of it. My lady, I'll go find His Majesty right now, Clara cried, turning to run. I lay on the cold floor, staring at the serene, indifferent moonlight outside my window. After the searing pain, a strange, tingling numbness was all that remained. The memories that had tortured me for so long began to fade, growing distant and blurry. Then they reformed in my mind, looking the same, but somehow something fundamental was different. I don't know how long I lay there. Two phrases repeated in my mind, over and over again. From love comes anger. From love comes hate. From love comes obsession. From love comes longing. No anger, no hate, no obsession, no longing, and so no love. I picked myself up from the floor. From outside, I heard Clara's joyful cry, "My lady, His Majesty is here. He's here." Isabella and Leo arrived together. The moment she entered, she rushed in with red-rimmed eyes, the picture of concern. "Oh, my dear sister, you've suffered so much." But when she saw me standing there, perfectly fine, she froze in her tracks. Leo followed her in and was equally stunned to see me unharmed. "My love, you were right. A little pain like that is nothing for my sister," Isabella said, turning and snuggling into Leo's embrace. I tilted my head. Strange. My reaction felt wrong. Isabella was calling Leo my love, and I should have been upset, but right now my heart was as calm and undisturbed as a still lake. "But sister, why did you smash everything in your room? That piece of jade? Isn't that the one His Majesty wore when he was crowned prince?" I looked around the room. Fragments of memory returned. I was in agony. Day and night, it was a constant, relentless pain. Eventually, I couldn't bear it anymore and started smashing everything in sight. The jade was indeed Leo's. It was our token of love, something I had always treasured above all else. Now it lay on the floor in a dozen pieces. Leo frowned, clearly displeased. "If you're fine, then what is all this madness?" His gaze fell to my bare feet and his frown deepened. "You're not even wearing shoes. Are you trying to get yourself hurt?" He started to walk toward me. "Ah!" Isabella cried out, her eyes welling with tears. "Your Majesty!" She had deliberately stepped on a sharp shard of broken porcelain. "Isabella!" Leo turned and immediately swept her up into his arms. "Amelia, you are being utterly unreasonable." He shot me a furious glare. "Summon the imperial physician." I watched silently as he rushed away with her. I watched silently as Isabella shot me a triumphant smirk over his shoulder. I touched my chest. Strange. I felt nothing at all. The world seemed different. Or rather, I was different. I used to hate leaving the Palace of Morning Dew. Every plant, every stone in the palace reminded me that I had been demoted from wife to consort. It reminded me that Leo might have once walked these same paths, hand in hand with Isabella. But now, the flowers in the imperial garden were so vibrant. The water in the lake was so green. The spring day was beautiful. Why shouldn't I go for a walk? I used to feel a dull, constant ache in my chest whenever I heard news from the Empress's palace. His Majesty has gifted the Empress again. His Majesty and the Empress played music together all night. His Majesty missed the morning court session for the Empress again. But now, what happened in the Empress's palace had nothing to do with me. Even when I thought about my past with Leo, my heart remained calm. The fluttering excitement, the heart-wrenching pain, it was all gone. I discovered that the world was clearer and brighter than ever before. My mind was sharper, more lucid than I could ever remember. So when Leo's attendant came to tell me to prepare for the shaman to draw my blood, my first thought was, why? Why should my blood be used to cure someone else? Giving blood hurts. I didn't want to. I ordered Clara to have the servants bar the doors to my palace. The shaman and his entire entourage were left standing outside. Though I had fallen from favor, I was still one of only 2 women in the emperor's harem. As long as the doors were closed, no one dared to force their way in. Soon, I heard Leo's furious voice from outside. "Amelia, what in the world do you think you're doing?" Leo rarely got angry, at least not with me. because I always put him first. Whatever he said, I did. Even if I was unhappy, a few soft words from him were always enough to soothe me. This time, he was probably furious because success was within his grasp, and I was backing out at the last minute. He stormed in, his face a dark mask of rage, while I was calmly doing my embroidery. Amelia, what is the meaning of this? Isabella is already 4 months along. Every day we delay is another day of risk. In the palace for 3 months, but 4 months pregnant. He had some nerve saying that out loud. I didn't look up from my work. I know you're upset that I didn't visit you during those 7 days, but I was busy with matters of state, and the Empress's pregnancy was unstable. You've always been so understanding. This time you've gone too far. I continued to stitch. Besides, did I lie to you? Are you not perfectly unharmed? I pulled a long thread of silk. Amelia, he tried his old trick, his voice turning gentle. Be a good girl and come with me, I checked my heart. Nothing. It was just as calm as when I first saw his face. Your Majesty, I said, looking at the intricate pattern on my embroidery hoop. I will come, when it's time for the Empress's funeral. Insolence! Leo roared. Outside there was the sharp, coordinated sound of swords being drawn from their sheaths. He had brought the Imperial Guard. He had surrounded my palace. My mind worked with cold, detached logic. I was outnumbered. A direct confrontation was unwinnable. Amelia, Let's go, I said, putting down my embroidery and standing up. Amelia, Leo suddenly grabbed my wrist. Turn around, look at me. I looked at Leo. I studied him more closely than when he first walked in, from his brow to his eyes, from his eyes to his lips. And I felt, even more clearly than before, the utter and complete stillness in my heart. A rare flicker of panic crossed Leo's face. His grip on my wrist tightened. Amelia, Your Majesty, the Empress is in the Phoenix Palace. Her stomach pains are unbearable. A messenger rushed in. Leo quickly composed himself. Before the messenger could even finish, he was dragging me by the arm toward the Empress's palace. Of course, Isabella wasn't in unbearable pain. It was just one of her usual tricks. When she saw me, her eyes held that familiar, triumphant glint. She had won. The poison had been in her body for 10 years, given to her by one of the Duke of Shu's foreign concubines on the very day she married him. It was so insidious that no one had ever found a cure. And now, my blood was going to save her. But looking at her, I felt the same as when I looked at Leo. Nothing. I remained perfectly calm, even as the shaman's sharp dagger sliced into my wrist and the warm blood began to flow into a bowl. Not only was the emotional pain gone, but the physical pain had vanished as well. I deliberately twisted my wrist, testing it. Truly, I felt nothing. It was Leo who let out a choked cry. Amelia. Twisting my wrist wouldn't affect the blood's efficacy. What was he so nervous about? My disdain must have been written all over my face because as I was leaving, Leo blocked my path again. Amelia, what is wrong with you? He asked, his voice agitated. I'm happy, I replied calmly. I've finally fulfilled my purpose. I can retire with my duty done. I know you feel wronged. I promised you after this. After this, Your Majesty should stay in the Empress's palace and live in perfect harmony with her. There's no need to come to my palace anymore. Amelia, Leo's face turned to ice. There's a limit to your tantrums. I'm not throwing a tantrum, I said, telling the absolute truth. Your Majesty, I don't want to see you in my palace again. Although I felt nothing for him, not even dislike, I had no desire to be surrounded by Imperial guards, ready to force me to do things against my will at any moment. Fine, just fine, Leo laughed through gritted teeth. Amelia, don't you come crying to me. He stormed off. I sort of understood Leo's anger. For all those years, I had never once defied him. Even when he forced that bitter medicine on me to end my pregnancy, all I did was cry and beg. I'm not afraid of suffering with you. I don't want some noble title. I just want to be an ordinary husband and wife with you. My love, please, think about it again. Just think. She's already 6 months old. Now it was just a bowl of blood. Why was I throwing such a fit? I could also understand why he felt so entitled to make me host the poison. I was the woman who would take a knife for him without a second thought. The year he was about to be reinstated as crown prince, his enemies in the court grew desperate. Several groups of assassins came for him at once. Without thinking, I jumped in front of him and took the blow meant for him. The gash ran from my shoulder blade all the way down to my lower back, so deep you could see bone. I had to lie on my stomach for 2 months to recover. I never once cried out in pain then. So, what were 7 days and nights of a poison worm's bites in comparison? What I didn't understand was myself. Why did I have to love a man so much that I would throw my life away for him? Those memories no longer stirred anything inside me. I had no way of knowing the answer, but it didn't matter anymore. Leo really did stay away from the Palace of Morning Dew. He went to the Empress's palace every single day. He made grand gestures, as if he wanted the whole world to know how much he doted on the Empress. Clara was always muttering about it in my ear. It went in one ear and out the other. I didn't remember much of it. In fact, it wasn't just what Clara said that I couldn't remember. I found that many things from my past were becoming blurry if I didn't actively try to think about them. They were like a fallen leaf or a blade of grass I'd passed on the road. Who would bother to remember the exact shape of something so insignificant? But as the days went by, one thing became pressing. I was tired of the flowers in the Imperial Garden. I was tired of the water in the lake. I couldn't stand being in this palace anymore. One sunny afternoon, I stopped my father on his way back from visiting Isabella. The Sorrow Eater was truly a wonderful thing. When I faced my father, I felt no emotion at all. Not even when I told him what I planned to do, and he shouted that I was insane. I just watched him calmly. Father, when you married my sister to the Duke of Shu, you were choosing his side, weren't you? The deposed prince and I, we were your disposable pawns. When the prince was deposed, you— Be quiet! My father's face was as pale as paper. I tilted my head. So, Father, will you help me? He was just like the old me. He had no choice. I used to crave their love. Why didn't they like me? What was I doing wrong? If I was just a little more obedient, a little more compliant, would they love me more? So, even though I had leverage against them, I never used it. I didn't think that way anymore. I didn't need anyone else's love. I needed to love myself. My father didn't disappoint me. He quickly arranged everything. On the night of the midsummer festival, there would be a grand banquet. A fire would be set in my palace. Consort Amelia would die in the flames, and I would slip out of the palace in the chaos. The thought of leaving these high, suffocating walls filled me with a quiet joy. So much so that bumping into Leo and Isabella in the Imperial Garden didn't dampen my spirits at all. The lotuses were in full bloom. The two of them were admiring the flowers from a pavilion. Isabella was already 6 months pregnant, and she clearly didn't want to see me. So I gave them a distant curtsy and turned to leave. But just as I turned, I heard Isabella let out a soft cry. I looked back to see Leo cupping her chin and kissing her deeply. I stared at them, confused. If they wanted to kiss, couldn't they find a private room? It was broad daylight, and the ladies-in-waiting standing nearby were so embarrassed that they couldn't even look up. I clucked my tongue twice and turned again. I'd only taken a few steps when I heard the sharp sound of shattering porcelain from behind me. Leo had smashed his teacup. I must have offended him. He suddenly demoted me. From Consort Amelia to Lady Amelia, a much lower rank. See, that's what happens when you expect someone to love you. He wasn't always generous when he wanted to give, but he was swift and decisive when he wanted to take away. I didn't care. Being demoted was even better. At the Midsummer Festival banquet, I wouldn't even have to sit next to him. I waited calmly for the festival. Isabella came to see me once. She mocked me, saying my favor was gone, and now even my rank was gone. I ignored her. She watched me for a long time, a puzzled look on her face, then sneered. You've learned a few tricks, little sister. Playing hard to get now? I'm afraid His Majesty won't fall for it. She left with her chin held high. Leo came by twice. Both times, he just stood at the door for a moment before turning and leaving. It suited me just fine. Before the festival, I met with my father one last time to make sure everything was ready. But that night, something went wrong. And it was something I never could have expected. According to protocol, a lady of my rank was supposed to sit in the lower seats. But Leo's attendant still led me to his side. The seat he'd saved for me was even above Isabella's. Isabella looked like she wanted to kill me with her eyes. The officials seated below were all shaking their heads and whispering. Leo pulled me down into the seat beside him. "Are you satisfied now?" he hissed. I didn't understand what he meant by that, so I didn't answer. He slammed his wine cup down on the table. "Amelia, how long are you going to keep this up?" I was even more confused. When have I been keeping anything up? He wanted me to host the poison, and I did it. He wanted my blood, and I gave it. Now Isabella's belly was round and full, healthier than any normal pregnant woman's. "I'm always the one comforting you," he muttered, more to himself than to me. "Can't you comfort me for once?" That's when everything changed. Tonight was the first court banquet since Leo's ascension to the throne, and many guests were present. People had just taken their seats, and the wine hadn't even been fully served. A maid in a standard palace uniform walked past the main table, and then suddenly drew a long, gleaming sword from her waist. Without any warning, she lunged at Leo. Instantly, more maids and guards who were part of the conspiracy drew their swords and blades. Screams erupted as the banquet descended into utter chaos. My mind worked with cold logic. Assassins. Target, Leo. This place is dangerous. Run! Leo dodged the first blow with surprising agility. I gathered my skirts and tried to flee in the opposite direction, but he grabbed my arm and pulled me back roughly. "Stay with me," he commanded. I didn't want to stay with him. The assassins were after him, not me. But Leo's grip was like iron, keeping me glued to his side. The real Imperial Guard moved swiftly, surrounding most of the assassins. But they were all dressed alike, and the fighting was frantic. An assassin in front of us spun around, his sword missing its intended target and coming straight for me. Almost without thinking, I twisted my body and pulled Leo, who was still holding on to me, in front of myself. I couldn't feel pain. But I could die. I didn't want to die. Let him die instead. As the blade pierced his chest, Leo looked down at me in utter disbelief. His eyes, staring into mine, were filled with shock, with incredulity, and with a storm of something that looked like unbearable pain. As the assassin pulled the sword out, that look in his eyes shattered into a million pieces. Of course, I didn't escape the palace that night. With so many assassins and the emperor himself being stabbed, the palace was in utter chaos. My father's carefully laid plan couldn't be carried out. And after that, I had no chance to escape. For some reason, Leo stopped going to the empress's palace and moved into mine instead. And he wouldn't leave me alone for a second. "I told you to look at me." "Listen to him," roaring again. I raised my eyes from my embroidery and looked at him. "Not like that," he cried, his voice breaking. "Not like that, Amelia. The way you look at me. It shouldn't be like this." "Then how should it be? You tell me, Your Majesty, and I'll do it." I was so tired. Leo's eyes were bloodshot as he shot to his feet. He grabbed my chin and kissed me desperately, almost violently. I blinked. I thought quite naturally of that day in the garden when he and Isabella had kissed. But I felt nothing. No disgust, no nausea. I just wanted to sleep. So when he pushed me toward the bed, I simply lay down. I knew what he wanted. In 10 years of marriage, we had done this countless times, but I couldn't quite remember what it used to feel like. I stared up at the swaying bed curtains. Was it always this boring? 1 cloud, 2 clouds, 3 clouds. As Leo moved above me, I seriously counted the embroidered clouds on the canopy. His wound hadn't healed yet. Blood trickled down his chest, dripping onto my body. Drip, drip. I kept counting the clouds. He was the one who chose to reopen his wound. It had nothing to do with me. Suddenly, Leo flew into a rage. He leaned down and bit my shoulder hard. His lips were now stained with my blood, but I couldn't feel any pain. I looked at him confused. Why did he bite me? Leo broke down again. He held me tightly, his body shaking with sobs. Amelia, what's happened to you? How did you become like this? He seemed to remember something. He froze, then scrambled away from me. Without even wiping the blood from his body, he threw on an outer robe and rushed outside. Summon the shaman! Get me the shaman! Hiding behind a screen, I watched as Leo pointed a sword at the kneeling shaman. What did you give Amelia? Why has she become like this? He already had a severe face, but now, with his long hair unbound and his black robe open to reveal a bleeding chest, he looked absolutely terrifying. The shaman was white with fear, knocking his head on the floor repeatedly. Your Majesty, what I gave the lady was, without a doubt, the sorrow eater. If it's a sorrow eater, why does she look at me like I'm a complete stranger? It must be. The shaman trailed off, then quickly changed his tack. Your Majesty, the sorrow eater makes a person forget all their sorrows and also the source of that sorrow. It must be that. He didn't dare finish, but Leo had already guessed the rest. His face went deathly pale. Nonsense! If it was just a sorrow eater, how could she not even feel pain anymore? Your Majesty, has the lady ever experienced extreme physical pain in the past? If so, the sorrow eater would indeed make her lose her sense of physical pain as well. Leo's face grew even whiter. I don't know if he was thinking of the child he'd made me lose or the knife I'd taken for him all those years ago. The hand holding the sword began to tremble uncontrollably. He pointed it at the shaman like a demon. The antidote! Give it to me! Your Majesty, I told you before we administered it. Once the poison enters the body, it fuses with the flesh and blood. There is no going back. But, if the poison feels that there is no more sorrow to consume in its host, the shaman knocked his head on the floor again. It will naturally leave to find a new host. Leo became a different person. He restored my rank of consort. The lavish gifts that used to go to the Empress's palace now started coming to mine in a constant stream. His wound healed, but he refused to leave my residence. He followed me around day and night. Amelia, do you remember this? You embroidered it for me the first year we were married? I looked at the slightly worn pouch. I remember. What about this? That winter, the snow was so heavy, you wanted to make me a pair of rabbit fur gloves, but you couldn't bear to kill the rabbit, so you chased it all over the courtyard trying to just pluck some fur. I remember. And that year, Leo's eyes grew brighter as he spoke. That New Year's, we went to the mountains to pray together, praying for. I remember it all, I said, looking at him calmly. So what? The light in Leo's eyes dimmed. It's okay, Amelia. He forced a smile. It's just the sorrow eater. Once the worm leaves you, you'll be fine. You'll get better. Amelia, there are so many misunderstandings between us. Let me explain. Leo started talking about his recent coldness. He said he was just angry that I had smashed the jade pendant he'd given me. Angry that I had spoken to him so coldly. He had somehow found all the pieces of the shattered pendant and painstakingly glued them back together. Look, I did it myself. It's just like it was before, isn't it? I suspected there was something wrong with his eyes. It's ugly. Throw it away. It was just the truth, but Leo's eyes turned red. It's okay. It's okay. He went on, explaining Isabella's words about the pearl hidden in dust. He said she'd just seen the letters I'd written to him back then. I always treasured those letters. I'd read them when I was tired. I never meant for her to see them. I nodded. Oh. And about making her empress. Leo took my hand. Amelia, the Duke isn't really dead. The kingdom isn't stable. Isabella's title as empress was just for show. Leo actually claimed that the child in Isabella's womb had nothing to do with him. The child was the Duke's. The Duke had faked his death and escaped with his hidden army of loyal soldiers. The enemy was in the shadows while he was in the open. By making Isabella the empress and protecting that child at all costs, He was trying to lure the Duke out into the open. It's his only heir. He can't possibly ignore it. Even if he doesn't show himself now, the child will always be a weakness we can exploit. Besides, I was right, wasn't I? He couldn't wait and made his move at the midsummer festival. If this were the old me, I probably would have cried with joy hearing him explain all this. But now, I was just listening. Amelia, once this is all over, I will depose Isabella. I promised you. I yawned. Your Majesty, I'm tired. You should discuss these matters of state with your advisors. I really was tired. I went into my bedroom, closed the door, and fell into a dreamless sleep. Whether Leo was telling the truth or not, I didn't care. To me, his words were as meaningful as knowing the leaves would turn yellow in the fall, and him following me around, saying things the old me might have loved to hear, was no different from the annoying buzzing of a summer mosquito. I spent my days embroidering and sleeping. Time passed quickly. When autumn truly arrived, Isabella gave birth to a baby boy. Leo announced it to the entire kingdom with great fanfare. When the baby was a month old, he made another grand announcement. He was taking the Empress and the infant prince on the annual autumn hunt. I knew what he was planning, and he knew that I knew. But when I asked to go with them, he readily agreed. Amelia, this is the final step. Trust me. The night before we left, I went to the Empress's palace. After the midsummer festival, the Empress's palace had been surrounded by the Imperial Guard. But these days, Leo treated me like a precious treasure, so no one dared to stop me. The baby looked a lot like Isabella. His personality is more like yours, though, Isabella said, holding him. Her words were still laced with venom. Doesn't make a peep. Doesn't even cry when he's hungry. So stupid. I was about to leave, but then she added, Don't blame your sister for always being against you. Leo married me to use me as a hostage. He shamed me and humiliated me. Why should I let you be happy? I lowered my eyes. I had no interest in arguing about it. She asked again, Sister, are you really going to do this? It was the first time she had ever called me sister without a trace of mockery or scorn. So, I looked up. Leo never touched me, Isabella said with a bitter laugh. Except for that one time in the pavilion. He only came running whenever I called because he was afraid I'd do something to the baby. I looked at her confused. Has my sister had a change of heart? One moment she was railing against Leo's cruelty, and the next she was defending him. Isabella clutched her stomach and burst out laughing. The sorrow eater. It's a truly wonderful thing. Her laughter turned to tears. Go. Just don't regret it later. I started to walk away. I hope you won't have any regrets either, sister. I sold Leo out. He was using Isabella and the baby as bait, giving the Duke of Shu a chance to kidnap them. The Duke knew it was a trap. If he came, he would have to bring all his forces. The autumn hunt would be a battle to the death. I told Isabella that I would help the Duke. Leo kept me by his side day and night. No one would know his plans better than me. Isabella asked me why. I told her plainly, because I need to run. Who wants to spend their days with a buzzing mosquito? But after the midsummer festival, the Duke's network of spies had been completely wiped out, and my father's contacts were among them. My father couldn't help me anymore. Everything went as I expected. Leo had no defenses against me. In fact, he was desperate to explain every last detail of his plan to me. And Isabella, as it turned out, had always been in contact with the Duke. She passed the information along. On the day of the hunt, Leo was in high spirits. Amelia, wait for me to come back, he said. He held me, looking just like the young man who once had eyes only for me. Of course, I'll wait for you, I answered him, sounding just like the devoted wife who once had a heart only for him. Just before he left, Leo turned back. Amelia, smile for me. I paused. I put down my embroidery, looked up at him, and curved my lips into a smile. He suddenly looked away, the hand holding his longbow trembling slightly. It's okay, he murmured again, more to himself than to me. He looked at me one last time. Wait for me. Then he lifted the tent flap and was gone. Of course, I wasn't going to wait for him. For all I knew, he might not even come back alive. The moment Leo left, I took Clara and we drove away from the encampment in a single, unremarkable carriage. Years later, I would hear stories of that day, of how the autumn forest was stained red with blood. The Duke, long thought dead, had risen from the grave and ambushed the new emperor with hundreds of his elite guards. The new emperor's own troops were cut off, their lines of communication severed. He was trapped in a valley where he fought for 3 days and 3 nights. During the battle, the empress was killed, and the 1-month-old prince also died. The new emperor, mad with grief, flew into a rage. The Duke was cut down, his body left in pieces. But at that moment, I had no time to worry about the forest. 3 days was just enough time for Clara and me to escape the mountains. Another 3 days, and we were nearing the northern border. 3 more, and the border pass was in sight. Beyond the pass lay a neighboring country. Beyond the empire, there were 7 other nations, each with its own culture and customs. I could find a place I liked and live out the rest of my days freely, in my own way. We hadn't stopped for a single day. With our forged travel papers in hand, we were about to cross. But as the whip cracked, the sound of galloping hooves thundered behind us, followed by a sharp command, "Halt!" The thick metallic smell of blood seeped through the carriage walls. The sky was growing dark, the wind heavy and cold. I sat inside the carriage, my heart calm. "Amelia, get out." A familiar voice, thick with rage and exhaustion. "Amelia, get out now. Everything you did. I won't hold it against you." I stared at the shifting shadows outside the carriage curtain, but I didn't move. "Amelia, what else is there that you're not happy with?" Leo's voice was almost a sob. "Get out of the carriage. I'll explain everything. I've already killed the Duke of Shu myself. There's no one left to stand in our way. From now on, There is no we." I cut him off, my voice even. "Your Majesty, I have no desire for a from now on with you." "Impossible!" Leo staggered, catching himself on the carriage shaft. "Amelia, it's my fault. It was all my fault," he said, his voice hoarse. "Just be good and come back with me. You're just under the poison's control. You've forgotten. You've forgotten how much you love me." Leo took 2 more steps forward. The horse stamped nervously. He seemed to lose his footing and fell heavily to the ground. Someone tried to help him up, but he yelled, "Get away! Amelia, you've forgotten. You used to put me before everything. You'd stay up all night, your eyes red, just to sew clothes for me. You'd save every penny, but still make me the most delicious food. You cared about me more than your own life. How could you not care if I live or die? How could you leave me? How could you—" "Your Majesty also said that was the past." I interrupted him coolly. "Leo, I don't love you anymore." Because I didn't love him, I could see things clearly. There was another thud against the carriage. The wind blew, lifting the curtain. It revealed the man behind it. Leo was missing an arm. He must have rushed here immediately after the battle because he hadn't even had time to change his clothes. They were covered in dried blood and his face was deathly pale. He was practically draped over the carriage frame, holding himself up with his one good arm. His eyes were bloodshot. "And why are you putting on such a lovesick act?" I met his gaze without flinching. "Leo, you don't love me that much either." "No," he cried out. "Amelia, there were so many things I had no choice about. We've come so far. You suffered so much with me." "No choice?" I watched him calmly. "Leo, if it had been a boy, would you have been so quick to get rid of it?" Leo froze, as if it took him a great effort to remember which child I was talking about. "If it had been a boy, he would have been the imperial grandson. That's different." "It's not different," I said flatly. "You had plenty of other ways to solve your problems. But you chose the one that required sacrificing her and sacrificing me. Just like with the Duke of Shu. You were already the emperor, and he was already defeated. If you wanted to eliminate him, you could have taken your time. But you chose the most extreme method, because these methods were the fastest and the cost to you was the smallest. Maybe you did care about me, but you also cared about your power, your status, your pride. Why did you insist on marrying Isabella, the woman who rejected you? You couldn't see through her little tricks designed to hurt me, yet you played along. Why? Leo, of all the things you care about, I was the most insignificant. I used to be so confused. I didn't understand. He loved me. We had so many beautiful memories. We had walked through so much mud together. Why would he treat me like that? It was only by stepping outside the situation that I could see it clearly. Love? Perhaps he did love me, just not that much. Leo, a love like that, I don't want it. No, it's not like that. Leo shook his head desperately. Amelia, it's not what you think. I do love you. He was actually crying. Tears streamed down his face, mixing with the dried blood. His hand beat against the carriage frame. You get out of the carriage, Amelia. I'll explain. I was always going to marry you. I only played along with Isabella because the Duke had spies in the palace. Then let's find out, I said. I stood up, pushed aside the curtain, and stood inches from him. I grabbed the horsewhip from the driver's seat. Let's see just how much you love me. Leo, right now, I want to leave. Are you going to grant my wish, or are you going to grant your own? Leo looked like he was about to collapse. He looked up at me, his hand trembling as he reached for me. You're filthy. His hand froze midair. A deep, soul-crushing despair flashed in his dark eyes. I didn't look at him again. I didn't care that he was leaning against the carriage. I raised the whip high. Giddy up! Years later, I would hear stories about that day. How the devoted new emperor, after fighting for 3 days and losing an arm, ignored his own grievous injuries and chased after the woman he loved for 7 sleepless days and nights. But her heart was made of stone. Everyone at the border that day saw it. The carriage leaving without a moment's hesitation. The man, already covered in wounds, nearly died on the spot. Even after his guards saved him, his first instinct was to keep chasing, until finally his strength gave out, and he collapsed in the dust. I never looked back. I don't know if those rumors are true or not. All I know is that the moment the carriage passed through the border gate, my heart felt like it had grown wings. After we crossed the river, Clara finally dared to peek out from the carriage. My lady, where are we going? She took the reins from me. I had her stop by a quiet, secluded lake. The sky was a brilliant blue, the water clear as glass. I took out the bamboo tube I carried with me and released the poison worm that had been waiting inside. Go on, I whispered. Find your next host. I wasn't afraid of it anymore. I had overcome something far more terrifying than any parasite. From then on, the world was wide and open. It was all mine, my freedom.